He died at 3:08. I documented the time, called the doctor, filled out the log, same as always. At 3:15, a voice came from the corner of his room. I'd worked this unit for 6 years. Psychogeriatrics, night shift, 12 hours from 8 at night to 8 in the morning. You get used to everything. The smells, the sounds, the way patients talk to people who are not in the room. It's not scary. It's dementia. The brain builds a reality out of broken memory, and that reality feels as real to them as yours does to you. The first couple months it rattles you. Then it becomes part of the job. Victor had been with us 7 months. He was 84. Former high school physics teacher, according to his chart. Quiet, not demanding, barely needed attention. During the day, he'd stare out the window or doze. He ate fine, no aggression. Staff liked him because he was calm. In our unit, calm patients are rare. The one thing about him was that every night, exactly at 3:15, he would wake up, sit up in bed, and start talking. Not yelling, not rambling, talking steady and low, like he was having a normal conversation. Pause, sentence, pause, sentence, like hearing only one side of a phone call. Sometimes he'd nod. Sometimes he'd chuckle to himself. He always looked at the corner by the window. The first few times I asked him who he was talking to. "Who are you talking to, Victor?" Every time he answered the same thing without looking at me. "Linda." Linda was his wife. I checked the paperwork. She died in 2004. Cancer. By the 3rd month, I stopped asking. I just wrote it down. Victor active, 3:15, talking, and kept moving. He started fading in February. Ate less, slept more. The corner conversations increased. Not just 3:15 anymore. Sometimes midnight, sometimes toward morning. His voice got quieter, not weaker, just quieter, like the conversation was getting more private. A few times I stopped by his half-open door and listened. I couldn't make out the words. Sometimes it sounded like he was listing things, names, maybe dates. Sometimes it sounded like goodbye. That night I checked on him at 2:50 during rounds. He was calm, breathing evenly, normal temperature. I checked his IV, wrote down his vitals. He didn't wake up. I left. At 3:08, the monitor alarmed. I was there in under 2 minutes. I called the overnight doctor. We declared him at 3:11. He just went in his sleep. No seizure, no struggle, no sound. A good death, if that exists. We left the room and kept the door slightly open per protocol until transport arrived. I stood at the nurse station and dialed the morgue. Routine. I'd done it plenty of times. You dial, you wait, you give the address and patient info. It takes a few minutes. At 3:15, a voice came from Victor's room. I lowered the phone. It was quiet. A man's voice. I couldn't understand the words from the station, but the structure was clear. Pause, a few words. Pause, a few words. A conversation, not mumbling, not a random noise. A conversation with pauses, like someone was answering. For a few seconds, I just stood there, listening. Then my brain started flipping through explanations. I was wrong. The monitor, the doctor, the signature. No, I saw it, I signed it. TV from another room. TVs don't run at night here. Outside noise. We're on the 4th floor and the window was closed. Someone from staff went in. There is no second entrance, and I'm the only nurse in this wing at night. I stood at the station for about a minute. The voice didn't stop. Then silence. Sharp, complete silence. Not fading out. Cut off. I made myself walk to the door. The room was empty. Victor was on the bed in the same position we left him. Sheet smooth, arms at his sides. The corner by the window was empty. The window was shut. The latch too. I stood in the doorway, staring at that corner. I know how stupid that sounds. I was looking at it like something was there. Nothing was there. Just wall, sill, closed window. Then from the corner by the window, quiet and clear. She left? I turned on the overhead light. Empty room, empty corner. Dead old man on the bed. I backed out, closed the door, and called the morgue. While I waited for the transport, I kept looking down the hall toward his door. Closed, dark inside. The hallway, quiet. Nothing. I talked myself into doing another round in the other rooms, just to keep my hands busy, just to not stand there watching that door. I walked to the end of the wing and back. The door was still closed. I didn't go back into that room for the rest of the shift. When the transport arrived, I asked a CNA to come with me. I said I still had paperwork to finish. She didn't ask questions. In the log, I wrote only, Victor, deceased, 3:08. I did not write a line about 3:15. What would I write? At 3:15, a conversation was heard in the room of a deceased patient, cause unknown. No. On my next shift, I came in early and asked the day nurse if she'd ever heard strange sounds from that section. She looked at me and said, "Which section?" I described it. She paused and said, "I try not to stay there after 7 at night." That was all. I didn't press. I still don't know what I heard. My working explanation is old building acoustics, pipes or ventilation, sound from another wing carrying through a load-bearing wall. That's all possible. Old buildings make weird noises. I know that. But I've worked here 6 years. I know what the pipes sound like. I know what the vents sound like. I know what someone talking through a wall sounds like. Muffled, no clean pauses, no structure. What I heard sounded like a conversation, with pauses. Like one person asked questions and another answered. At 3:15, like always. Peter asked me not to turn off the hallway light on his very first night. Not the night light in his room, not the bathroom light. The hallway section between his room and the nurse station. He said it calmly. No panic, no explanation. As long as it's on, it doesn't come in. I didn't ask what it was. We don't ask questions like that here. By policy, that hallway light goes off at midnight. Sleep routine, other residents, energy use. I broke policy, not because I believed him, because we honor strange requests if they don't harm anyone. Leaving one hallway light on didn't bother anyone. Peter's diagnosis was moderate vascular dementia. 72, former mechanic according to his intake. He looked younger. Unlike many of our residents, he was still pretty coherent. He knew where he was. He remembered his belongings. Sometimes he told jokes to the younger CNA. There was confusion, but mild. No documented hallucinations, no aggression. Just an older man with early dementia whose family couldn't keep him at home. For 2 weeks, everything was calm. He slept well. He didn't hit the call button without reason. Sometimes on rounds I'd find him awake, staring at the ceiling, but when I stepped in, he would say evenly, "It's fine. The light is on." Like confirmation. Like he checked the same thing every night and got the right answer. Once he added, "While it's on, you can sleep." I didn't ask what happens when it's off. I told myself it was just a comfort ritual. I got used to it. I stopped thinking about it. I left the light on as part of his routine. On the 3rd week, the building had scheduled electrical work. We were warned that some sections might lose power briefly while breakers were replaced. The protocol is standard. Emergency lighting at the exits, rounds every 20 minutes, document everything. At 11:41 p.m., the lights in our section went out. Not the whole building, just our block. One panel. The red emergency lights by the fire exits clicked on a few seconds later, but that's not real light. Red, weak, only near the doors. The hallway between rooms and the station was dark. I stood up immediately. The breaker panel was at the end of the corridor, around the corner. Less than 30 seconds away. Halfway there, I slowed down. No sound from Peter's room. Before any change at night, someone yelling, a door slamming, and he would either hit the call button or peek out to see. Now the silence was total. Not quiet, total, like no one was there. I reached the panel and flipped the breaker. The hallway lights came back. I hurried back to his door, closed the way I'd left it. I opened it. He was on the floor right by the door, face toward the hallway, arms stretched forward and slightly out, like he'd fallen, or like he'd been crawling. Eyes open. Alive. Normal pulse, normal breathing. I called the doctor anyway, out of procedure, no injuries. We got him back into bed. He didn't remember how he ended up on the floor. He didn't remember getting up. As I fixed his pillow, he looked at me and said quietly, "I managed to close my eyes." "You didn't." I asked him what he meant. He turned toward the wall. He didn't say another word. I filled out the incident report as resident found on floor, no signs of injury, returned to bed. Standard language. For cause I wrote, disorientation during loss of lighting. That could have been true. Dementia, darkness, panic. He got out of bed and fell. It's plausible. But I spent the rest of my shift replaying those few seconds in the dark hallway. I walked to the panel. Red exit lights. Silence. Nothing unusual. I didn't see anything. And he said, "You didn't." Like I was supposed to see something. Like while I was walking through that dark corridor, something was there, and I passed it without closing my eyes. The next day, he asked to be moved to a different section. I passed it on. The director asked why, and I said he was uncomfortable in this wing. That was enough. Peter was moved to the far block. Different station, different hallway. I checked on him a couple times, just to see. He looked calm, slept fine. He never mentioned the light again. 3 weeks later, he discharged to his daughter. I still work the same unit. The hallway light in that section, I never turn it off now. Not at midnight, not ever. Once a coworker asked why. I said it helps with rounds. She shrugged and dropped it. At home, I always leave my hallway light on. I never used to. I'm a rational person. I know the light in my apartment has nothing to do with a hospital corridor. I know that. I even told myself it was practical, that a lit hallway makes it easier to get to the bathroom half asleep, that it saves me from stepping on the cat. Any normal excuse that sounded better than the real reason. I thought it would pass, that the habit would fade on its own, like habits do when you stop explaining them. It didn't. A few months ago, my breaker tripped in the middle of the night. I woke up in complete darkness and silence. An apartment I know by heart. Every corner, every inch, suddenly felt unfamiliar. The dark felt exactly like that corridor. Absolute. My first thought wasn't, find the flashlight. It wasn't, reset the breaker. My first thought was, close your eyes. I did. I lay there maybe 10 minutes. I didn't move. I just lay with my eyes shut in the dark and waited. For what? I don't know. Then I got up, found the flashlight, and reset the breaker. I don't know what Peter saw in the dark by his door. I don't know what he meant by, I managed to close my eyes. I don't know what he meant when he said it doesn't come in. But that night at home, I was very glad I didn't open my eyes before the light came back. When Rose was admitted in March, she hadn't spoken in 4 months. Not because of anything physical. Her swallowing was fine. Her voice was fine. She just stopped. The paperwork said late-stage Alzheimer's, 79. The last note from her previous facility read, minimal speech, limited contact. Her family brought her to us and barely came by. Once a month, 20 minutes, then gone. For the first 2 weeks, she lay quiet. Ate when she was fed. Stared at the ceiling or toward the window. Sometimes she'd turn her head when I entered, but her eyes wouldn't focus. They looked through me or just past me. I still said good evening. I still explained what I was doing during rounds. That's what we do, even if the patient doesn't respond. She didn't respond. I didn't expect her to speak again. Sometimes the person is already gone and the body is just running. It's hard to accept your first months on the job. Eventually, you accept it as normal. In April, the night of the 2nd into the 3rd, I went in around 1 a.m. routine check. I was going to adjust her blanket and look at her vitals. She was sitting up in bed, on her own, no support. That was strange. In all those weeks, I had never seen her sit up by herself. I walked over, thinking I needed to help her lie back down. She took my hand. Not weak, not reflexive, firm, deliberate, the way someone grabs your hand when they need you to listen. She looked not at me, but slightly to the side and said, "A ginger cat is sitting on the windowsill. The window faces east." I didn't understand for a second. Then I did. My cat is Ginger. Her name is Martha. She's 7. I picked her up off the street. My apartment window really does face east, and Martha does sit on the sill, especially at night when I'm working. Rose could not have known that. Nobody on the unit knew I had a cat. I don't talk about my personal life at work. Not out of secrecy, just a hard line between work and home. I kept my voice even. Rose, you're okay. You need to lie down. She didn't let go. Still staring past me, she added, You left the bathroom light on. I always leave the bathroom light on when I leave for night shift. For the cat. She hates the dark. It's so automatic, I don't even think about it. Flip the switch, close the door, leave. I eased my hand free, got her back down, and stepped into the hallway. I stood there a few minutes until my hands stopped shaking. In the chart I wrote, Rose active at 1 o'clock, speech contact, disorientation, nothing specific. The next days she was the same, quiet, absent, staring at the ceiling. I came in for rounds, she didn't react. On Friday she took my hand again. Her voice was lower than the first time. The cat didn't eat. You rushed this morning. I did rush. I poured food fast. I didn't check the water bowl. Martha sometimes refuses food when she senses I'm stressed. I can't explain it. I just know it happens. I started keeping notes. Before every shift, I wrote down the state of my apartment, what lights were on, where the cat was, what she'd eaten, the time I left, how the curtains sat. Once I took a photo of the living room before I walked out, just so I'd have something to compare later. It would have looked paranoid from the outside. I needed to know if this was coincidence or not. Rose spoke irregularly. Every few days, sometimes less. Not always about my apartment. Sometimes it was fragments, names I didn't know, pieces of conversations I never heard. When her family visited, they said it was just her usual. I didn't ask what usual meant, but when she said something specific about my place or about Martha, she was right every time. Martha is sitting by your door. I get home after shift and find her by the door. Something flickered in the window. I check and find a branch scrape the glass, a fresh mark on the frame. You didn't close the balcony door all the way. I come home and the balcony door isn't latched shut. Every time I found an explanation. And every time the explanation didn't change the fact that she knew before I did. In June, she held my hand differently, harder than usual. I went in around 1 a.m. and she was awake, sitting up like that first night. Her eyes were different. For the first time, she looked straight at me, clear and focused, no emptiness. I've seen that look in other patients during rare moments of lucidity, when a person comes back for a minute and knows they're back. It usually lasts a few minutes, then it's gone. She said, "Someone is standing behind your door. Don't open it." I told myself it was dementia, spatial confusion, fear with no source. I wrote it down and moved on. That morning, when I got home, I ran into the neighbor who lives below me in the lobby. He stopped me like he'd been waiting to tell me something. He said he saw someone on our landing during the night, right by my door, around 4 a.m., just standing there, not knocking, not moving. When he came up from the first floor, the person turned and walked down the stairs. He didn't see the face. Maybe wrong floor. Maybe waiting for someone. I didn't call the police. Nothing happened. Rose died at the end of August. Quietly, in her bed, at night. I still check my lock twice. Not because I'm afraid of that specific person in the stairwell, because Rose warned me 2 weeks before it happened, and up until that moment she had been right about everything else. No exceptions. I don't know what she was seeing. I don't know how it worked. After she died, I reread my notes from those months and counted. 12 concrete details about my apartment. 12 and not one miss. Sometimes I think, if she could see my apartment as clearly as I can see my own hand, what else did she see there? She wasn't telling me everything. She told me only what she thought I needed to hear. Why that? Why those moments? That's the worst part.